classic like country or folk artist, whatever, sitting down with an acoustic guitar and writing a song. I used to do that a little bit, like sit on an acoustic guitar. I don't think I've written a song on an acoustic guitar in years, literally. It's just a different way of thinking about things. I think a lot of artists these days do think about sound a lot because
there's so much available.
And yeah, and there's so many undiscovered things, but there's also whatever, but then there's also, you know, trends that happen with sounds. And I was listening to something the other day, and they were talking about Ed Sheeran and Shape of You, and when that track came out, the marimba sound, was it? I forgot what it was. That became
maybe a kalimbo.
Okay, so that became like the sound.
I'm not sure.
So that like everyone just sort of used that sound on everything. You know what I mean? After that track came out. But yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important to just people are, because everyone's sort of making beats and working in a similar way now. Like, people need to kind of find their own sonic signature, and whether that's making your own samples or whatever it is, like people want to sort of discover their own sounds.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like, you know, there's only so many chord progressions, so many melodies, so many beats you could come up with, but the sound world is kind of limitless in a sense.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like, that's true, but at the same time, like, everyone is also using the same sample packs from Splice, you know what I mean? And everyone is kind of a lot of, you know, using the same presets on, or using Rhodes, or using, you know what I mean? So like, there is, you do have to push yourself to kind of find sounds that are unique. I think it's not kind of.
Do you spend a lot of time doing that?
A little bit, I wouldn't say heaps. A little bit, you know.
Yeah, I find when I have spare time in the studio, that's kind of when I will go around looking at, you know, synthesizers and sample packs and see what I can come up with, and then maybe save them as like a preset almost.
Nice,
you know. But yeah, so take us on a tour through the creation of a typical song you would normally work on chronologically. How does it come together? Yeah,
I don't know. I guess kind of just what I was saying. Like, you know, let's say I come up with a beat that I think is a vibe or whatever. So I'll start with that. Come up with you know, a cool sound or a cool synth sound or a chord progression to give it, you know, a body, and then I guess I've got something. Start adding layers. Then sort of start maybe separating like a, you know, verse and chorus, or a part A and a part B. Like, I've kind of been doing that a little bit lately, where it's kind of not really verse and chorus. It's more just kind of like A, B, and C. Like, the song is kind of a 3 sort of stage thing. But either or, like, just kind of think about some variation. And then once I kind of have maybe a little bit of a track, then I kind of think about, okay, what type of singer would be good on this? What type of voice, what type of vocal? And then I usually try and approach someone to sing on it and sort of show it to them and be like, hey, what do you think about this track? Like, is it working for you? Is it vibing for you? And if it is, do you want to try and kind of write an idea for it, or sit on it together, or whatever it is? So that's kind of something which has worked for me a bunch of times in the past, and both the releases I've put out have been all co-written with different vocalists.
So you'll kind of do the structure, the chords, the beat, and then they'll kind of do the top line with you.
Often, yeah, that's how it's kind of worked for me. Often, actually, some of the more recent songs that I've done have been a little bit more organic, I guess. Like, I really started with kind of some chords with them, and then we came up with some ideas, and then I kind of built the track with those ideas in mind already.
Cool.
So it's sort of happened in both ways. But I guess it just depends on the song, I suppose.
Got it. So what influences your decisions when it comes to structure and arrangements?
The song. You just have to go with the song. I think that's also might sound cliche, but the only thing that might change my mind is, like, sometimes I'll go with whatever I feel the song kind of needs, and then you might get to a point where you'd be like, okay, I went with what I feel the song needs, but it needs to be a little bit more interesting at right at the beginning to get people interested, to get people in straight away. Like, I do kind of try and think with a pop mindset sometimes, but often later in the creative process. Like I'll kind of just do what feels right and then bring it back and be like, okay, how do we kind of make this a little bit?
We need to bring in the hook earlier,
exactly,
or the beat earlier,
exactly,
or something like that.
So I do think that is important. It really is, but I really also think that following the song is important. I saw a quote recently from Greg Wells, and he said if the song is good, it will tell you what it needs. And I thought that was brilliant. I was like, that is so right.
Amazing. I love that. So do you have any templates that you work with? And other than templates, are there anything that you use to work faster or get inspired quicker?
So I actually did create a template about 6 months ago. I was in Australia for a few weeks, and I had this challenge with Nick, who was my previous studio partner in Jerusalem. Great guy, a really talented producer. And we had a challenge that every Friday would need to have a new track to send each other, basically, while I was away for 3 or 4 weeks.
Love it.
Yeah, it worked really well, actually. Some good music came out of that on both sides. It wasn't like a finished track, but like at least some ideas and like sort of something working. And so when I was doing that, I created a template which was just kind of really basic, like whatever, a few drum tracks and a Rhodes track, a synth track, and a few reverbs, a few delays set up, and then a strings track and a horns track and whatever, everything just sort of ready to go. And it kind of worked well for me, I guess. It was like, come up with an idea and then kind of see what other colors would fit on it, and you'd have them there straight away. It is an efficient way of working. I don't know why I hadn't done it before. And I also haven't really been using that recently since. Recently I've kind of just been opening up tracks from other things. Like I bought a new sampler piano, recently, and I've kind of just been messing around with that, and I tend to just open up a new session and play around with that, and it's kind of almost just like I can't be bothered opening up the template. I kind of just open up a blank track. But yeah,
you start getting inspired by like whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of just sort of like whatever. Like I'll just start playing. I think that the template approach is very, very good and is important. And it is faster. I'm just, I guess, a bit lazy sometimes, and I don't always work from it. But I have found it to be a good way of working.
It's funny how laziness could actually waste you time down the line.
Yeah,
right?
It's kind of weird. Listen, the whole making music thing is weird. I don't know when it's going to work. I don't know when it's going to just frustrate me. I'm sure you've been in a situation where you kind of just start creating, nothing good is coming out. You're just like, whatever, screw all of this. Like, yeah. I'm not good anyway, but like, sometimes it does work, and so like you just have to be lucky on the day. So I don't have a magic formula, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And that said, is there anything else you do to maybe get things going faster? Or
the main thing for me was more like the room setup, honestly.
Nice.
So basically just sort of having everything
in arm's distance,
ready to go. So the speakers are set up and ready to go, and as much as possible without sort of disrupting, like having, like walking into the room and still having it being a room. I want sort of the speakers plugged in, ready to go. Like I've got a couple of pedals on the desk ready to plug in. I don't have mics set up, but like they're kind of ready to be set up. I have, my keyboard ready to plug in, hard drives with sample libraries also ready to plug in. Things are just sort of accessible and ready to go when I need them, and I've found that to be pretty helpful in terms of being efficient.
Amazing. What are some of your favorite instruments? Could be virtual or real, and why?
Favorite instruments? I guess I'm a guitarist, so I have to say guitar. At some point, I bought a new Telecaster when I was in New York a couple of months ago. It's a model on a 50s, like a remake of a 50s.
Nice.
Yeah, Telly's always been my go-to. It's kind of just been... I grew up on a Telly, like that was my first guitar, a Squier Telly, when I was 14, and kind of I had that for more than 10 years. And then, so when I was in New York, I kind of figured it was a good time to buy a new one. So I bought this Fender, and it just sounds insane. And that's kind of my sound. Like, it's kind of just what my fingers are used to playing and how I'm used to the sound that I'm used to, so just a better version of it. So that's sort of my go-to in terms of guitar. And I love piano. I really, really love piano. I'm really influenced by like Niels Frahm and Oliver Arnold and their sort of felt style of playing, that really sort of soft thing, and everyone's into that at the moment. It's like a really big thing, but I'm a massive fan of that. So in my old studio I had a piano, and at home I had a piano, and at the moment I don't. I just have my keyboard. But there's a couple of really good sampler instruments. The one I was saying was it's a Native Instruments sample like model of Niels Fram's piano, which is really cool.
Is that the Unicorda?
No, so the Unicorda is it was made with Niels Fram. But it's like a special, like custom made, like it's like a one string piano type thing,
right?
Instead of
you're talking about the Noir.
The Noir, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Mendy, who was a previous guest on this podcast, also got it recently, and I think was also super inspired by it.
Nice. It's an unbelievable instrument. It's got, aside from just the piano, there's sort of two sample sets. There's one with the felt and the one with the pure without the felt, and they both sound amazing. Like really, I didn't realize that sampler pianos could actually sound that good. Like people have been talking to me about Keyscape for a while, and I never really, I didn't have it yet, but I tried a bunch of other sample pianos, and I just didn't realize they could be that good. And then I tried Noir, and I was like, this is insane. It really blew me away. And aside from that, it just has some amazing features and sort of cool like effects in it, and like everything in it just sounds great.
I'll have to try it out.
Definitely.
I also, although I'm like on a lower version of Contact right now, but
right.
But yeah, I love the Native Instrument sample pianos. I think they're very dynamic and realistic. Yeah.
So this is really, I don't know. It really surprised me with how good it was, and just the features. Like check it out. It's really great. So I've been using that a bunch. That's like a really just kind of fun thing to play. Other instruments that I like, I have a Korg Minilog, which was kind of like my first analog synth and still my only analog synth, which I got about a year ago, maybe a bit more, and it's beautiful. It really sounds amazing. You have to spend a little bit of time on it, just sort of tweaking it, learning how to use it, but it's a lot of fun and it sounds amazing, and it's not like a break the bank analog synth.
Yeah. Have you found that learning how to use that analog synth has helped you also in the software version?
Yeah,
of like synthesizers?
For sure. Because you learn about attack and relay, not attack and release,
ADSR,
attack to get exactly like all that sort of stuff, and shaping envelopes and what detuning will do, and what LFOs will do. And I'm still not. I would not consider myself a synth expert, but just sort of learning with the knobs, I just feel like it's a different experience. I have found soft synths that sound really good, like on Logic, use Logic as well. There's a Logic synth in Logic 10. I'm just trying to find actually one of the new ones, which I think sounds amazing. Which is the retro.
Alchemy?
I don't use Alchemy, really. I'm sure it is good, but I've never really used it that much. But the retro synth,
yeah,
it's kind of like
that's kind of like that old school.
Exactly, it's designed to be sort of just a very analog synth sort of model, as opposed to like a more sort of digital or FM situation.
Right. You're going for like that 70s synth.
Yeah, it sounds really good. It sounds really, really good. I've actually written a few parts on that, which I think sound great. But having the knobs in front of you and really sort of playing with them just sort of teaches you how to kind of tweak sounds, I think. And you don't get that with a soft synth unless you kind of know what you would have done with a hardware synth. You just wouldn't play it in the same way. You know what I mean? You can tweak a sound and get a sound that's good, but you kind of wouldn't have that dynamicness of playing and turning knobs at the same time. And that's kind of the sound of analog synths for me, is like the constant moving of knobs and evolution of the sound, as opposed to just kind of setting and forgetting, and that's your synth sound. Like that's not a synth to me. You know what I mean? That's just kind of like a keyboard.
A patch.
It's a patch.
Yeah.
It's a patch, which can work and is good. And I'm really not trying to be an elitist here about it. Like I use that stuff, but to me, like the whole character of an analog synth is the moving of the knobs. That is what makes it an analog synth.
Love it. Is there anything you do specifically in your productions that you think gives you a trademark sound?
It's hard to say, but I have a tendency, I guess everyone just sort of plays what they like. I feel like there's sometimes, it depends, like, when you're working with other people, like you don't want to